for SK to pick it up here. Trying to walk through the smoke, but it's just not going to happen. SK Gaming, second major championship in a row. They are your winners.
Despite Fnatic's best efforts, it goes the distance. It goes all three maps. And we have our champions, the best team in the world, Ninjas in Pajamas.
Red touching the box, are they going to peek? Holding it now, and there is it. It's just out of Flamey. It's not going to happen. Astralis have won the face at London Main. There's no time. He just has to watch that clock tick down. This is it. Na'Vi have taken the major.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new piece of content called Time Travel LAN. I am Richard Lewis, the esports journalist extraordinaire, joining me for this preamble through Counterstrike history, appropriately, some of the best. Are you fucking up my intro already, Moses?
Oh, no, I'm so sorry.
It's all right, mate. It's all right. Even though this is pre-recorded, I'm going to leave it in. This is
you could also just mute your mic like a polite individual. But
you know,
manners and that.
Etiquette lectures from Duncan Thorin Shields. Anyway, no, fuck it. It's all staying in. It's all staying in. Anyway, so look, I have assembled some of the finest minds in Counter-Strike. Obviously, for a historic show, we couldn't do it without the esports historian, Duncan Thorin Shields.
I've actually shortened that now. I'm esports. So just esports.
Just as you're going to get a tattoo under your eye.
Yeah, why not?
Esports like that, right? So yeah, esports, Mr. Esports. We have, of course, got Spunj, now a commentator, was, of course, one of the greatest analysts to do it, and he was in IGL as well at some point.
Oh, any of his lineups on the list?
Yeah, no, funnily enough.
Right. Just
some of the lineups here did shit on my team, though, so
yes.
I can talk from the receiving end, you know, I can tell you just how bad they reamed us out.
Yes, and of course, the newly muted Jason Moses O'Toole, he's unmuted now. Good, excellent, he's learning, he's evolving.
He's going to represent a temporary unmute button.
Yeah, good, we all need those. So look, I'll explain the premise, obviously we know, but to the viewers, this is the premise of the show. A long time ago, back in a past life, I was an editor of a website called cadred.org, and that was like kind of the hub for Counter-Strike Source. And one day when we had a bit of a lull between events, I came up with the idea of a way of framing the discussion about the greatest Counter-Strike Source teams of all time. And that was that we would cover a non-existent LAN called Time Travel LAN, and we would report on it as if it was real. And it was just a way of sort of saying which teams from history would win, because generally I feel like those debates, it's kind of like, it's more about the journey rather than the destination. I'm sure we've all got an idea about who the best team is and who even is going to be for this one, but it's the discussion that's the interesting part.
By the way, am I right in guessing comment section probably a complete shit show?
Well, let me tell you guys, what actually happened was about 50% of the audience couldn't figure out where to watch this non-existent LAN.
Get me out already.
Right. But, I mean, and so we led into that because I was like doing news posts like Time Travel LAN delayed due to like tech problems and stuff like this, right?
Yeah, like a time machine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, obviously you can't have a LAN, even a fake one, without a fucking delay. So anyway, that was blowing people's minds, and then about 25% of the people that got it thought it was.
Wait a minute, though. Even that part's mad because surely some of these lineups contained the same player.
Yeah.
So how could they ever play against each other?
Cloning.
Why am I trying to make it seem like it makes? I know. Yeah. Get up.
Clone LAN. He is a fucking clone. So anyway, and then 25% of it thought it was a good idea. But it was always something I wanted to come back and do once we got a bit of CSGO history under our belt. And obviously in this day and age, instead of writing it down, you just get, you know, people talking to a webcam. So that's what we're going to be doing today. So basically what we've done, we've gone out, we've assembled what we believe to be the 16 best teams in CSGO history. Spoiler, we're not all in agreement, as we're about to get to. We've then allocated them a seeding. We're then going to draw those historic lineups into a single elimination, best of three, irrelevant, they're not really playing. It could be best of whatever, make it up. But a single elimination bracket, and then we're going to discuss who we would think would win each matchup and why until we get to the winner of Time Travel LAN. And while I'm doing this, by the way, because I did sort of get one of my graphics guys, a very talented Welsh dude called Bulski. It's all we can't see it, because it's going to be edited in post, but there is going to be nice, sexy graphics flying up on the screen. Or at least I hope there's, we'll see. Okay.
Might be better than the major then.
Yeah, well, yeah, almost certainly. Right. So look, let's start with the teams. These are the teams that ended up making it into the final selection. And this is in the order that we agreed approximately to seed them all in. So we've got 2018 to 2019 Astralis. That's the lineup. That's with Magisk, so Device Dupree, Zipnix, Glaive, and Magisk. 2015 Fnatic. We have the 2013 Famous Streak NIP. We have 2014 Virtus Pro. We have the 2019 Grand Slam winning Team Liquid. We have 2014 LDLC, 2016 Luminosity, 2017 Astralis, so the previous iteration with Kiebi, current day 2021 Na'Vi, 2015 Envy, 2018 FaZe, obviously the super team, 2013 to 2014 Very Games / Titan. Obviously, there was a move there. We've got 2015 to 2016 Na'Vi, 2015 NIP, which is when Fiflarum was replaced with Arlu. This is where it starts to get controversial down at the bottom. 2017 to 2018 Cloud9, which is the Boston Major winners. And then 2016 to 2017 Gambit, which was when they added Zeus from Na'Vi to that lineup and obviously went on to win Krakow. So, first of all, guys, open to the floor. How are we feeling about those 16 teams as being a true reflection of CSGO excellence?
This is where Jason usually pipes up, right? He's usually the first one to take the ball by the horns, really define the direction we're going here, set the tune.
Okay. Yeah. We'd had that little bit of a conversation before we went live, so we'll just bring it up now. The whole TSM missing, obviously, the precursor to Astralis, that core, that Danish core that had been together, Device, Dupree, Zipnix for so long. So, I mean, we could just start it right there. I mean, the debate we were having is, does that 2017, 2018 Cloud9 deserve to be there? Because a lot of the weight is obviously by that great run at the major, actually most of it probably. And outside of that, not a whole lot to talk about, not a whole lot of tenure and a whole great body of work compared to TSM.
I would even say it applies to the Gambit team as well. If people don't know, all Gambit won was that, and then like a DreamHack Open or something like that. Essentially, I looked it up one time. They already won something mental, like 2 best of 3 against like top teams ever, but they won a major. So to me, the problem is the TSM squad famously didn't win a major. That's why it later had to be Astralis and Glaive who did it. And obviously Carrigan didn't win a major, so he hasn't won one yet. But if you go look at the year that we're talking about, 2015, arguably the most competitive year. Look how many bloody teams are on this list already from that year. Then you consider, even though they didn't win a major, they were in like semis, they were always in the top 8s, they were okay at the majors. And outside of the majors, they were like arguably the 2nd or 3rd best team in the world. Like they won 5 significant tournaments, including featuring all the teams at the majors. And probably the most famous detail people might remember is they won something like 7 or 8 best of X LAN series against the Fnatic team. We have number 2 on the fucking list. They basically owned the number 2 team on the list. So the problem I have is this. Obviously, fans will always like the Super Bowl, like the NBA title. You have to win the championship to them to be the greatest. It's just the media landscape we live in. But to me, if you look at the body of work, like they're way ahead for me of the Cloud9 and the Gambit squads. I mean, just look at what they did. And like I say, look how many like incredible performances you have to have. Basically, in this world, like the difference is if Fnatic wasn't there, they might have been themselves top 3 on this list. Some of the people like Cloud9 and Gambit, there's no way you can take out the list and they go up.
Yeah, and Chad, I mean, the thing that I've got there is it's like there is a weighting given to the majors. I can't really explain the criteria for this. I won't lie. There is no written down criteria. It has to be
very broad though, right?
Yeah, but I mean, obviously the reality is TSM were sort of the perennial semi-finalists as good as they were, and they probably beat way better opposition and certainly played in a more competitive era than the teams down at the bottom, but they didn't really win a fucking lot.
Well, like a lot of people who've only been watching the last couple of years, you could just relate that to what Liquid was like when they were going up against the Prime Astralis, right? I think that's the best way to look at it. And they were the ones who had the choker reputation back in the days, right?
Yes.
That was the issue that they used to have, was were they ever going to get past it? And then that core goes on to be the greatest team of all time, right? So they kind of had to get forged in that. And that's why it's so So like when we're talking about criteria and how we weigh these teams next to each other and stuff, there's also has to be, it sounds really wanky, right? But there has to be like a certain air of like magic of what the scene was like at that time. Like when we had, FaZe with AZ and stuff and we had so many different mixtures of teams and firepower and also I think there's going to be a bit of this where we romanticize different parts. Like there's certain parts for me, boys, I swear to God, when we start talking like 2016 stuff, I've like blacked out part of that year from my memory. So it's like super hard for me to like some of these teams because we were just getting smashed week after week after week. And I'm just like getting into like this deep, dark hole. I'm sure you boys remember me at the bar. And like for me, reflecting on certain periods like that, I have a hard time. Like I have a hard time going 2016. Wait, we lost to fucking Tyloo when? Like so yeah, all this, it's going to be different because as we all know, Duncan's going to have the best recollection of all of this, but there's different parts. I'm sure Jason, like with the Cloud9 one and the Liquid stuff for him, because it's such a momentous thing for America, like it's going to mean a bit more to you. Whereas like for the rest of us, lucky we can be more impartial, I suppose.
Yeah, well, it was why I wanted to get you on because I thought having like an in-game leader perspective who played against some of these lineups and no doubt studied demos, even if you didn't play against them from some of these lineups, would give us an insight that maybe the rest of us don't have. And I think it's important to recognize as well, yeah, we're all going to have biases. I mean, I think one of the reasons why I was kind of like in my initial list, I put Cloud9 down. It's because I was there in Boston. And that's like one of the best experiences I've ever had at an esports event. The crowd, the fairy tale. Yeah, it's just because you couldn't believe it happened. And then so you sort of add, whether you acknowledge it or not on some level, you add upset and shock into that criteria, like Cloud9, that lineup was never meant to win a fucking major. So, and they did it by beating, I mean, it's a legit run. They beat the best teams there. And of course, had that comeback against FaZe. So
the analogy would be, it's the reason why I gave it that name, the Miracle in Mass, even though it's not as extreme as the famous Miracle on Ice. It's one of those moments, but that would be voted like a top 10 sports moment of all time, the Miracle on Ice, like where they won, the amateur team won against the fucking Soviet team in hockey. So same scenario for Cloud9, like one of the most epic finals ever. Again, nobody thought they could do it, especially not in that fashion. Like if you told them it's going to go all the way to the third map and overtime, you'd think surely FaZe wins that one. So I'll also say as well, you probably have quite fond memories of that LAN because you didn't end up getting murdered. It's always a good day when you got murdered, I find.
Oh dear.
All right, Ice Cube.
I'd say, I'm actually looking at this list. One thing that kind of surprises me is how high up the 87-0 streak NIP is, to be honest with you.
Now, Sam is just the adjudicator, but he said that as well. He said they were paper tigers for real. And this is another aspect of it. We've got to weigh up. There is an era element to it, right? Where it's like, that was a piss weak era to play in.
And well, I mean, it's what you just said as well. That's got to be, of all the lineups on these 16 teams, that 87-0 NIP has got to be the most romanticized in every aspect, in every way.
But you have to remember though, like the thing with this is that had Forrest and Get Right coming out of 1.6, where they were just like that's the thing that a lot of people like gloss over with that run. It's like comparing the skill of the two games back then, 1.6 and Source. Sure, the Sources like had aim and but it wasn't the same, right? Like I think most people would argue that 1.6 had the best players, right? Like if you so then
most of the Source players used to say back then before the games merged, like they would just admit it. In fact, a lot of them would even say, I used to be a fan of like 1.6 and then I started playing Source. Like people like me, I'm sure would tell you that.
Yeah. And then they just had the cheat sheet, right? They just plugged in Fifi and Freiburg, who had the Source brains, who like learned all the geeky nades and shit. And then they just like merged the even exist, right? Like what do we exist for a lot of people? They just think about him as, just like the in-game leader of FaZe for a little while. He was a big fragger, right? Like, and that's one of the things that makes that roster at the time scary. But it's the same thing. Like you compare that, you go, okay, yeah, they had a head start over everybody else because of all those things. Then you start comparing that to some of the names under it. Like the 2019 Liquid would, I don't want to, but
the most skilled team ever.
Yeah, like you look at not only the type of Counterstrike they were playing, but the individuals in that team, and you compare the two, and you go, okay, well, right, was that NIP better than that Liquid? And well, I'm probably leaning towards no, but like that's the thing. This is why it's so you could argue so many of these points. Virtus Pro, like you were talking about obviously the Cloud9 winning the major, like and how much of a romantic storyline that is. Maybe you can compare that one to when VP went on home soil, and the other one would be Fnatic upsetting NIP at the very first major. Those three, right? I don't even put Gambit in that ballpark. They beat Immortals in the final. It was one of those finals we get to, and like this is like no matter who wins, we all lose, right? Like that was one of those ones where it's like we had these awesome matchups that could have happened and shit, and it was just this is the fucking grand final we get. Yeah,
I'm sure the Brazilian fans agree with that sentiment. I like the way Chad in any major setting has to always shit on the Brazilians and get all the hatred and then suddenly we can't even throw things in the bin anymore. Whatever it was.
They misquote me. I've been getting misquoted.
By the way,
recently.
let me play devil's advocate, because you are right, Chad, where essentially I have a bit of an advantage, which is, first of all, it's sort of a misnomer to call them the 87-0 NIP, because that might imply it's only when they went 87-0. Spoiler, the 87-0 was something like 7 or 8 months. That actual lineup played for 2 years together. They were in all 3 years, 2012, 2013, and 2014, at times the number 1 team in the world. They had not only the 87-0 streak, after they initially lost to the Adren Dorsia Virtus Pro, they continued to just win tournaments for like 6 or 7 months more. Then they had a streak where they were number 2 behind Titan of Very Games, but they came back in 2014 to win tournaments like Copenhagen Games, DreamHack Summer, and become a top team again. And basically, if you look over the title haul they have, it will be mental, mate. It will actually be something like, I'm not joking, like 20 trophies or something. Even if you're going to say some of them are smaller, like at the end of the day, even small ones back then might have like the 3rd best team in the world. So it's very hard to chop up. And then this is the last detail I'll throw in there. If you want to talk resume, their resume is unbelievable. Even when, because everyone's going to think, like I say, 87, it's at the beginning, Thorin, when it was just very good. No, in 2014, boys, we've already got all the scene at this point. We've got all the majors. We've already got professional teams in all the countries competing. Even over that span of time, I'm going to say off the top of my head, they made the top 4 at tournaments they attended. I'm going to say, this is not a joke, it is easily over 30 times in like a 2-year span. That will never be replicated probably in the history of Counterstrike. Those are impossible stakes. And that's when you played in 3 people's eras, essentially. You played in your own, you played in like what was basically going to become like the Fnatic one or whatever. You played in the same time period. Like, mate, some of the teams on this list that they're playing that time period. And then lastly, as you said about the fragging power, they were the team Liquid of their day. They weren't considered tactical geniuses. They oftentimes were playing the team that's supposed to beat them tactically. But here's the thing. You had Forrest and Get Right at the beginning were just the 2 best players in the game. Freiburg was way too good for an entry fragger. He would win MVP of tournaments. He won MVP of a major. And Exist, he was not just an IGL. He would frag out himself. So, like, mate, the joke is the 5th Lauren angle is the only knock you can really put on him and the era. But, like, I actually think people sometimes compress the era to in your brain. You think it's just
yeah, because what people forget is as well, I mean, it's 2014. They finally get their major.
Yes, exactly. They won all the way out the door, yeah.
Yeah, and that was, by the way, I mean, sure.
Yeah, they were also in 5 major finals. Oh, no, 4, because I don't count the Allo one. There were 4 major finals in a row. They won 1.
Yeah, and they only won 1. It was like, because you always thought to yourself, like, when are they going to get it? And you definitely didn't believe they could get it in 2014. Obviously, I was there. I worked that event, funnily enough, as an analyst. And I still think to this day there's a big asterisk over that, where if Valve just hadn't dropped Cobble, like a new map,
and the randomizer, there's a bunch of that one.
Yeah,
they got Cobble as the 3rd map, like both their quarterfinals and semifinals heading into the grand final. That was sick.
I'll just say this, like, let me just put this line, and this will put a tape on it. That means after they were the most purely dominant team, never lost, blah, blah, blah. After that, they still fucked around and made 4 finals and won 1 of a major. Like, mate, that's what I mean. Listen, you can certainly argue the context of the opposition, but no one's done the things they've done.
No, and that's it. I mean, like, out of all of the teams on this list, they're the one with, like you say, the most trophies, certainly the most top 4 like finishes over that period that the lineup was in existence for, and so that's why they're up so high. But the crazy thing is, I mean, like, in my mind, like, as we'll get to, I don't know how deep they'll go in this tournament, because I do think they were one of the few teams in the beginning of the game that actually gave a fuck. I mean, can
I ask you a question though about the criteria? Again, I know it's loose and we're not really setting hard and fast, but one thing I'm obviously already thinking is, I do hope that, because to me the premise is done otherwise, we're not going to do that thing where we go, well, since they were in 2013, they'd lose to everyone on this list. Like Cloud9 would just push their shit in because
no.
We're not doing that. Like, we're not doing it like, like Messi would beat Pele instantly, like.
put it this way. I don't even think if that's the way the bracket goes and they somehow get through to play that Cloud9, I'll be firmly in the NIP camp.
Fair enough.
You know,
I just wonder where people are at on that one, because people always do that thing of like the past athletes were always worth. I wondered where people were sat on that.
I have a similar question, philosophically speaking, about these lineups. Would we start talking about like the very games Titan that's going to have like Kenny S? Do we in 2013, 2014? Are we talking about him and saying this is pre-op nerf Kenny S?
Yeah,
and when you go to 2019 Team Liquid, it's the Krieg update. They have the fucking.
I think. Let's see if we can remember all those. Like obviously, Org for Astralis.
I mean, I think that's important because obviously some teams had success predicated on abusing metagame essentially.
Yes. Well, Big isn't on the list, so we should be pretty good.
I was gonna. There we go. Let's get all the memes in, boys. Bring all the memes in. All the memes.
But yeah, so I mean, I don't think there's any other two weird standouts there. I mean, apart from TSM we've talked about, I don't know if there's any particularly notable.
I actually thought, by the way, one thing I will give you actually in the way the list's made, the way it is somewhat fair as well is, for example, we do have like very games that didn't win a major, but we don't have the Fnatic that won the first major. But I think that's entirely fair. Like all the Fnatic team basically did was win that major. So I think in general, like I'm willing to accept these by like we don't have to have the TSM one.
I mean, you have to remember that 2013 major is very weird because obviously, as you say, Devil Walks Fnatic wins it. If you remember, Semphis, it was a semi-finalist at that major with Complexity. So, you know, I mean, that to me, yeah, it's got to be included when you're talking about other teams or whatever. But yeah, I don't think any of the teams that had deep runs of that tournament cemented like true greatness to be recognized as one of the 16th best teams of all time. And as I said, TSM would be on this list because they probably should have had a major or won more trophies than they did at the very least. And if they had, they probably would have been on. And probably still should be. I'm sure that's going to be the biggest sticking point for a lot of people.
I'd say there's one lineup I actually don't know if this would have worked in so much, but I guess the only other lineup I can think of that we might be missing out on wasn't the 2017 Brazilian lineup. SK Gaming, didn't they have like that pretty crazy streak of wins?
Yeah, they won 5 out of 6 tournaments. Yeah.
So we've got kind of like Luminosity. I mean, like I almost want to say /SK. You know, but I mean, I guess
that's fine. I'm just bringing it up because and it'd be, I mean, Luminosity in 2016 won those 2 majors, but they, you know, the 2017 one probably, I think they might have even had like more trophies than that 2016 one, but the majors obviously.
And they have Phelps in the line, so I actually thought they were even the more skilled team, dude.
Well, maybe we fucked up the whole list.
No, that's fine.
We're gonna just leave them out.
These are just these aren't like deal breakers.
We don't have to ruin
just honorable mentions. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Good.
They've been lost by the sands of time, Richard. Shit happens.
Yeah. Well, you know, now obviously the entire podcast is xenophobic, and you know, poor old Phelps.
Is it because there's Brazilian?
It turns out maybe it is.
The eternal question. Philosophers will always ask.
I know. Exactly. I remember Socrates pondering on that one. So you know, there's all the teams, and obviously as well, I think the French are sort of very overrepresented on the lineup. But no doubt Duncan will be explaining why.
Mainly so I can do that accent. Well,
I'm really looking forward to
it's in my contract for this show.
Really looking forward to that.
We're bringing back the RPK origin story.
Oh, God. No, let's never talk about that again. So, look, what will probably be appearing up on screen at this point is going to be the bracket overall. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through each of these matchups, discuss them, discuss the lineups, discuss who we would think and why. I'm sure some of these matchups are going to be, especially at this stage of the tournament, are going to be particularly one-sided and pretty easy to theory craft. Although, as I said, I think there's one or two. I'm not too sure. So it's going to be interesting to see what the panel thinks. And obviously, as I said, Sam will get to cast the deciding vote if needed. If not, he can just sit there and do bong hits without saying anything and wondering why he's even here in the first place. Yeah, the dream. Right, so the first matchup, we have 2018/19 Astralis. Again, as I said earlier, the lineup where they added Magisk for Kiebi, and they are going to be taking on Zeus's Gambit, comprised of Dozier, Adren, Moo, as I believe it is correctly pronounced, Zeus. And
that was Moore, wasn't it? Isn't it Moore?
They say Moore. It can't be. It's M-O-U.
I know what you mean. But...
And there's already a Moore, so it's Moo.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
You know, Chicken Coop. It's not him, obviously. It's the other guy. And then Hobbit, who obviously currently, at the time of recording this, has had something of a renaissance. I think he got 6th overall in the HLTV Players of the Year, which... Yep. Above Electronic, controversially for some. So it just goes to show the kind of bounce back he's had. So there you go. It's Astralis, the lineup many people think is the greatest of all time, taking on Gambit, but didn't really win a lot, honestly, outside of Krakow.
Here's the thing, boys. Let me handle this one because I'm going to say something funny and then controversial in this order. So the funny thing is,
great.
Astralis would fucking Goomba stomp this match. It wouldn't even be. It would be one of the most embarrassing of the entire list. Spoiler: Astralis actually used to shit stomp the best teams in their era. Like, forget this Gambit. And then the second one is this. And I'm just going to do this to just be mean, petty, spiteful, all my best qualities. You know, recently there was a piece of content, I think it was even for Blast or something, wasn't it? Where it was a sponsor of Blast, where they had all these pros rank the teams that had won the majors. And my God, what has happened to the brains of pro players? Do you know how many pro players were putting this Gambit in like the A tier of all the teams to ever win the major? Like, so I don't know what is like standing out in their mind, or maybe they remember something. I don't know what it could be. So all I'll say is actually pros would massively disagree with even where we have them on this list, that they think that was like some epic peak or some shit. So I'm actually amazed how far off we are, because as far as I can tell, we're all sort of in agreement, like they're lucky to be on the list.
Well, so I'll just read out the notable achievements of this lineup. And it's not actually as bad as you think.
Okay.
So at the end of 2016, right at the very end in November, because that's when tournaments used to end back in the day, we didn't keep riding until like December 23rd, like we do now. But yeah, they won the Ace of Predator Masters, which, not a particularly prestigious tournament. That was where they beat that Kingwin lineup. They won DreamHack Open Winter 2016. This is where Avert Your Eyes, that was obviously against Renegades. They did have a sort of quarterfinal at the Atlanta Major, and then they followed that up with a quarterfinal again at Las Vegas DreamHack. They went to CS Summit not long after that, and they were runners-up, lost to the Brazilian SK Gaming lineup. They won DreamHack Open Austin by beating Immortals, and then obviously they win the major in Krakow, again beating Immortals. So I mean, there's some big trophies there. It's just obviously you are going up against one of almost certainly the greatest lineup of all time.
Yeah, this one, I agree with Duncan in the sense that it's pretty clear cut. But I think one of the interesting things here is for this Astralis roster that came together in early 2018, right, after Kirby decided he wanted to go be the star of North, right? That's the whole story, in case people not too up to date with that. And then Magisk, who was, a couple of events earlier, bawling his eyes out, then gets the opportunity of a lifetime to join this Astralis team, and then they go on to achieve absolute greatness, right? But at this major we're talking about that they won, which is, let's say, 6 months prior to all of this, that's where Gambit beat Astralis in the semifinals, right? And Overpass, I think I remember that one vividly. That was the first major I worked when I transitioned, right? And Mo just absolutely battered Device that game. Like, I feel like he just out-orped him, right? And that right there was
he had like 27 kills or something. He was carrying for sure.
Yeah, and that right there, that was the standout, right? Because unfortunately, then VP went lost, right? And they meant that we wanted to get the VP Astralis rematch. I think that was like where we were at in the time period. And then unfortunately, we got the Gambit Immortals final, right? Which for most of from a storyline perspective, it's like, oh, okay, cool. These two teams have made it. Yeah, but they don't come into this event as considered best teams in the world, right? They weren't really on anybody's radar to win the event. I don't think like they were both
no. If people don't know at the time, at this point of time in that period, they'd almost never won like a best of three. I think they'd beaten like the G2 Super Team once. That was it. They famously were the team that used to be like a best of one demon. If you got them on Overpass or I think Overpass and Cobblestone were the two maps. Like those, they were incredible on. But if you could avoid those, like they wouldn't win best of threes at the time.
That was the thing, right, with this team that it had on Cobble, for example. Train as well was another map. Like I played Gambit when it was Adren, Mo, Hobbit, I think it was Waylander and Hooch,
yes.
Right? And that was like MLG Columbus qualifier. And I still remember then like playing them on train, and Adren was like a turret. He'd just be in the back lines with the M4, and like you'd run out pop or you run out main, and he's killed 3 people and we don't even know where the fuck he is just yet. And I remember that continued. And that's when like we started looking at Hobbit, when it was like Cobble.
Yes.
Remember like Matt called it like the Hobbit hole or something, right? As you'd come out of the end of platform, and Hobbit would play that position a lot. And having Adren and Hobbit on a map where CTs didn't have to move a lot, Cobble. You'd go, you'd stand, you'd fight. They were awesome at that. Like, and that was one of the really hard things to get through, is this team, they didn't do a lot, right? They weren't, I wouldn't say they were strategically brilliant, but like you'd plonk them in one spot and they hit their shots. Like Dozier would just like late lurk Ivy a lot. He'd put pressure. He'd be annoying to play Ivy on train, right? They'd have like all these little, the players from the region. And I guess now when we look at it, because of the Hobbit issue, the Hobbit thing as well, right? We consider him one of the best players in the world. Like they're all good fraggers besides Zeus, right? But Zeus came in as the in-game leader piece, and that's kind of what gave them that extra oomph. But the thing with this is there's so much around this Gambit win, right? It was that train game where that call came in, right? Have you guys heard this too? The one that
Yes.
It wasn't Zeus that made the call.
I was basically told by Adren that like he made the call, because as far as I know, Adren was, as you saw, he became an IGL. I think he was like a secondary caller. So the problem is, this is his opinion though. Like it's disputed obviously as to who actually, like I'm sure Zeus would tell you he made it. Like you can't, it's one of those ones where it depends who you're talking to as far as I know.
Mm.
But it's because Zeus made the play, I remember. I think that's what people connect to it. So I don't know which is true myself, mate. Because I will say, they were saying this when Zeus had left, so they might also have been bitter, to be fair, that he'd left the team, you know. That's why I can't know.
That was romanticized as soon as it happened. I remember like all the conversation about watching him speak on remember there was like almost like a Reddit petition to make that the major graffiti, was like Zeus's face sprayed over the poster in the middle of T-Spawn. So that kind of got misconstrued.
And my God, would that man's ego have been out of control if he'd have actually had a graffiti of his face in one of the maps in Counterstrike just forevermore. Like that might have been the end.
But this is one of those teams that it happens once and that's it, right? And I think the history of the team, right, up until that point and then after that point, show you exactly that, right? They didn't stay together for very long. They tried to bring in all these different pieces. Zeus fucked off immediately. Like when a player fucks off immediately after you win a major, like that's how you know that the team was never meant to win the major. Like that to me is super odd. And then you consider what we know about that teams like that have had Zeus in them before. They're very fiery, and you compare that to Astralis, right? This is like a well-oiled machine. They're a team. They're a family. They're going out. You know, they're doing all this bullshit. Right, you've got the other side of things. Well, it's the dysfunctional family. It's right where you pick up the wooden spoon and you batter each other type family, right? So you think about it from that aspect. It depends on what type of family you grow up in, I guess.
That was definitely my family. I'm just saying, you know, times change. Shad. I don't know if the modern crowd's down with that.
I think I forgot how old I've gotten. Really,
fair enough.
Yeah, but I think when you compare those factors as well, not just like the tactical difference, not just the individuals in the server, like you start looking at that element as well. Like this team, it wouldn't never have had longevity, right? And in like pressure matchups and stuff, this Astralis, you play like 10 times, maybe Gambit wins once, maybe. Like I don't even think that. Like this, it shouldn't even. Fuck that, not even once.
By the way, Jason, do you remember that game he was talking about where he played against Gambit on train at the MLG Columbus qualifier? Do you remember that game?
Oh my God! Shit!
Fun fact:
was that the
it was
one we
casted by me and Moses. And all I'll tell you is this: you have to understand it was still early 2016, boys. Although it was already in fact, it wasn't even the MLG Columbus Majors. So it was
the qualifier.
Yeah. All you need to know is this: I did sort of try, and this is 2016 for fuck's sake, to push the envelope as much as possible to make Jason sort of shit himself. That I was about to say things that would like cancel the whole career. No, I was going so hard for it as well.
I mean, look, I remember. Go on, Jason. No, jump in.
No, I remember when he went on one of his fucking rant. I remember exactly what he said, and I was sat there like, "Oh my fucking God! Like, where is this gonna go? Where is this gonna take?" I was still new as well. That was like,
that's every episode of By the Numbers for me, mate. So you know, I've been living in that world for years now. Like, but no, the whole story of that event, obviously Krakow being the sort of jewel in the crown for this Gambit team, is that almost every other team shit the bed. Like, it's not like Gambit turned up and had like a miracle run a la Cloud9. I mean, you know, there was so like they weren't even meant to beat the Fnatic team they played in the quarterfinals, if you remember. You know, that was the Dennis Fnatic lineup that had like a little mini resurgence the previous year. They weren't favorites for that. They certainly weren't favorites for the Astralis series. You know, they beat them somehow. And then on the other side of the bracket, look, let's be real. The final everybody wanted was Virtus Pro Astralis.
Of course.
That was what should have happened in Krakow.
Or Virtus Pro, anyone. It could that was the close plan B, was VP versus anyone else.
Yeah. How did we got rolled? There was because KNG and fucking Henny, that double AWP that they were running was so deadly because they were just scrimming. Like they were just scrimming, and it was like when you have these guys running at you, they were retaking the B bomb site on overpass after both being locked out and rotating from A with AWPs, like jumping out of heaven.
They would run on CT Inferno and just push down mid with AWPs. Like if that works, it just works. It's just the most gimmick play. I've got two little details about this event for you. One is that's a mad detail people forget. Virtus Pro were in the semi-final against an underdog of a major in their home country, and they lost the game. They just got 2-0. Like what the fuck?
It wasn't even close.
Yeah, that could never happen. You'd think that could never happen. And the other detail is it's a side story, but whatever. We're telling stories. Kirby actually lost double elimination style in that tournament because he got beaten by Gambit in the semis, and then he foolishly in the nightclub partying up. Who's there in the nightclub? Immortals. So he goes up, First Brothers there. Somehow, you know, the convo starts. I believe he just said to like Henny or something like, "What, shouldn't you be in bed? The majors tomorrow." And they were obviously like, "Corral whore." And then a punch is thrown, and he got knocked out twice that event.
I was there that night. I was at the club that night.
Honestly, shout out to Device because A, he's always crying in the club, and B, he's also been knocked out one extra time out of a tournament without that many tournament lives. Anonymous reference just crowbarred in there for no reason.
Crowbarred into a completely irrelevant topic. Yeah, not bad. What were you going to say, Chase?
No, I remember that was the general consensus of everyone there was looking around and being like, what the fuck is Luminosity doing here? Like literally everyone. Yeah. Immortals, sorry.
That's pretty wild, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's crazy to think about.
And then they lost the final and got shit on. So it's like, boys, listen, I don't ask much. I have a fairly low bar. Can you maybe just try for the one world championship you ever make it to in the final? You know, maybe one day.
And look at where those guys are now too. Like look at where their decisions have taken some of their careers too.
Yeah, because it was after this event.
It's the worst decision they made. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. 100 Thieves, all of that debacle kicks off. So look, I mean, you know, a Gambit, I think, are a kind of interesting footnote. I mean, the one thing I will say to this, and then I guess we can wrap it up because this one is fairly an open and shut case, I'm guessing, when it comes to the voting as to who wins. But, you know, this, I think, that, you know, they're almost better than you remember, and it was good that like long-standing guys, like, I mean, yeah, I got wrapped up in the whole Zeus angle of it because Zeus had left Na'Vi after sort of perennial, like he'd underachieved a lot. That lineup had underachieved a lot, and then he gets his major, and I kind of felt good about that. Even if he is an asshole.
Till you got to know him. Yeah.
But, you know, you have to think about the other elements of that lineup, and that is like Dozy is a meme now, but he was a lights out player back in the day.
By the way, we're not going to surely skip what I think one of your all-time great burns, which is, you know, Dozier got that graffiti, Chad, because he did the genius 200 IQ grenade.
The grenade, yeah.
Here's the problem. Richard even said this at the time. I'm just going to say it. He said, I don't believe he knew what he was doing, or that was intentional. That's all that someone just said, throw the grenade, Dozier. Like, listen, I don't want to be, you know, like disparage the guy or anything, but I've met Dozier. I'm not sure he did that on purpose, Chad.
Anyone who uses the phrase 200 IQ to describe Dozier is so far fucking gone. It's like, have you ever met this motherfucker? Like 20 IQ might be fucking overselling it. Like he's just a regular dude. Like I always thought that. I don't even know why that really got a graffiti. Yeah. So whatever. It wasn't as great as that. But anyway, Dozier was a lights out Counterstrike player, and this kind of like was his last hurrah.
Yeah.
So it's always going to have some sort of memorable aspect to it. But Adrian, obviously, I followed him way back, like back in the K23 days.
Yep.
Another legend in the game who, like, obviously, it's hard to believe he's still sort of trundling along out there with the longevity he's had in his career. And I think this was the lineup where, bizarrely, because again, the word rookie doesn't really seem to mean anything in esports, because there's no sort of criteria for it. This was the lineup where Hobbit was getting like rookie of the year, wasn't it?
It was arguably the bit of his day in a sense. Like he came from like a low tier 2. You put him in tier 1, he was just good.
Yeah.
Wasn't Hobbit's like coming out party the DreamHack Open and Jönköping the year before when they won that event?
But that was the end. That was the end of 2016.
The end of 2016.
So that's within the purview of this lineup.
Yeah, this was this rookie year. And I think one other thing about this lineup too. I mean, I'm with Duncan. I think this team would get absolutely stomped by the 2018-2019 Prime Astralis, like close to every day of the week. But Adren was the VIP of this major as well. Adren was experiencing a massive resurgence, and I think we kind of touched on it, but probably didn't give it the credit he deserved. He was absolutely bonkers throughout this whole major, jaw-dropping, the way he was able to win some of those mid-range duels that we've kind of known him for at different stages throughout his career. And this event for him was crazy. And you combine that with the Hobbit, you combine that with Zeus coming in, and they had like a very, very nice level. Even with everything said, they still get stomped in this matchup.
Go on, Chad. Last point.
Just what is interesting here, right, is because this was the last major we had then before the Astralis that we all know and like love, the one that we're talking about that they were versing, then became the team, right? Isn't that interesting to like in July of the year just before, this is where the scene was at. This basically killed VP, right? This was this Astralis changed lineup, whether it was by choice or not. After this, they came up with the blueprint and how good that they approached the game.
They probably thought if they win that major, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So this is like really defining right here because it changed the direction of the team going forward and the way that they approached the game, because the team that came out in 2018 is not the 2017 version of Astralis that won the major. It's a team that has set Counterstrike in the direction it is now, right? Like the reason that we talk about this team in the best in the world is because of not only the type of Counterstrike that they played, but what they set up for everybody else, right? They took things that we've had in the game for years and refined it and showed everybody that the devil is in the details with this. Whereas Counterstrike before, it felt like, and I don't mean any offense to any of these other eras and stuff, but it was a bit more of a caveman game in the sense that it was more like taking these fights and like swinging out and like maybe having more momentum or quicker based strategies. You look at Counter-Strike now, it doesn't resemble a lot of what it did post that Astralis. So like this Gambit winning this event actually set us up to where we are now. So we'll give them an honorable mention for sending us in the direction of Counter-Strike the way it is, because that, I don't know, if they didn't win that event in that weird way. Right now, Counter-Strike's so much more consistent. We don't have that level of nonsense happening anymore. Anyway, that was my little bit.
So, a vote. I'm guessing we're all unanimous that Astralis would take this one.
Yep.
Yeah. By the way, I also hope it goes without saying we're not going to expound on Astralis too much, because I'm imagining they'll be in a few more rounds of this tournament,
Yeah, that's deliberately why we focused on Gambit and the old war stories. So, keep it like that. We will be talking about them, no doubt. So, yes, Astralis are through. Gambit are out. There's no double elim here at Travel LAN, so rest in peace.